Some couples separate amicably, others unfortunately do not, and this affects the relationship between the children and their parents. Now, you have argued in a presentation that you gave here in Malta a few days ago that each parent is duty-bound, and I quote, to enable the child to have a positive relationship with the other parent. How conscious are we of this responsibility, of this duty on our part as parents?
There are issues all around the world because the framing of relations has traditionally been in terms of rights. That the father has rights and the mother has rights and the child has rights. And that puts the father and the mother at loggerheads. They conflict with each other. If you describe the relations they have with each other and with their children in terms of responsibilities, then they have a joint responsibility to bring up the child. This should require them to reach agreement on any decision regarding the child and also make sure that the child has good relations with each parent and that parent's family. So that if we can change the mindset, if we can change the way in which we describe these relations, then we have a better chance of persuading parents that when they get separate and when they get divorced, the first thing they have to do is think about the children, think about what effect it's going to have on the children. And instead of going to the lawyer, they should be going to a counselor, they should be going to somebody who understands about child development to explain to them and help them reach a consensus as to how the child is going to be, where he's going to be, what times he's going to be, and not immediately run off to a lawyer to fight with another lawyer. And the results can be very, very serious because of the adversarial process.
Your Honor, is parental alienation a reality? I mean, even from your past experience, can you give us some examples of situations you have encountered of parental alienation? And are parents actually willing to alienate the children willfully because they're at loggerheads with the other party?
So first of all, we have to talk about the term parental alienation because the wording itself is a little bit confusing. The question is, who is alienating whom? And I prefer to describe a situation in which one parent without any good reason relating to the welfare of the child, persuades the child or influences the child not to have contact with the other parent. That is a form of child psychological abuse. It's child maltreatment. Now, there are many situations in which this happens. There are some situations in which it's justified for a parent to tell the child it is not good for you to be in contact. But those are extremely rare situations in which the other parent is exceptionally violent or exceptionally insane. In most situations, even where there has been a certain amount of abuse within the family, to cut off the child from the other parent it should not happen. Why does it happen? In many cases, it happens because the parent is so distressed or so disappointed or so angry with the other parent that they will use any means in order to get revenge. And the child is, of course, there and available, and the child is used as ammunition in this terrible war and terrible battle. There are some parents who have disorders, personality disorders, which means they will stop at nothing in order to crush the other parent, and they do not realize the devastating effect that happens to a child when there is no contact with one of the parents.
But how can you prove parental alienation? How can you prove that one of the parents has a personality disorder that you're describing?
So the answer is that you first look at the facts, and there are certain criteria. If it is established that there was a good relationship between the parent and the child before the family split up, and if it is proved that there's a sudden change, and there are certain clues you can get from the child. For example, an alienated child will completely reject the parent, will remember nothing good about the relations between the child and that parent, will think that that parent's parents and even the grandparent's dog is an evil dog. They will tell all kinds of stories which cannot be. Let me tell you about a case that I dealt with. A child said that when I was 1 year old, my father abused me sexually. There is no way that a child the age of 1 will remember what happened. Another case dealt with by a psychologist that I know, a boy of 12 who rejected his father. And the psychologist said, "But do you not remember anything nice that happened with your father?" He said, "No, we never had anything nice." And she showed him a picture. A year previously, they'd been on the seaside and they were having a lovely time. And the child was so convinced that the father was evil, he said, "You must have photoshopped the picture."
Oh my God.
It never happened. The child, in many cases, will choose to be loyal to one parent and to reject the other parent in order to make life easier for himself, that he doesn't constantly have to carry messages and doesn't have to lie.
Is this the result of this alienation, this psychological trauma, or is it the other parent indoctrinating the child what to say?
It can be either. It can be both together. It may be a way in which the child, in a way which is childlike and not appropriate, chooses to take sides in order to get out of the conflict. The trouble is that these results in the future are devastating. This child whose parents have split up has not seen a normative couple relationship. He has not seen the parents resolving their problems in an amicable fashion. So he internalizes an improper, non-normative spousal relationship. He also, because he has broken off contact with one of the parents, has not observed normative child-parent relationships. And that means that when he grows up, he's going to have problems with relationships, he's going to have problems with his own children, and the research says that a child who was alienated when he was a child, when he grows up, he will alienate his own children. And there's also a lot of medical evidence that a child who is under stress, it will affect his brain development, it will affect his intellectual development, it will affect his, there'll be neurological problems which may affect his physical health, because he will not be as resistant to all things that happen to him as a result. So the effects are devastating. That's why we call it child maltreatment.
We are aware that during your time in Malta, you have been meeting several ministers from the Maltese government, the Minister for Justice, the Minister for Family. What have you been advocating in favor? What reforms do we need in Maltese laws? And how different or how similar is the situation in Malta with other situations you are more familiar with?
So the situation in Malta is not substantially different from the situation in many countries. In Israel, we have a rather more developed system. I am not yet familiar with the Maltese law in all its ramifications, and I'm offering to do a formal consultation so that I'll be able to speak to all the stakeholders here. I'll be able to learn about the law. I'll be able to observe what happens in courts and in other places, and then to make recommendations about law reform. The issues which have been brought before me and that from those who are involved are several. First of all, there is insufficient training for all the professionals, psychologists, social workers, lawyers, judges. They all need training to understand what happens when a child breaks off contact with another parent, why it happens, and what are the results and how to remedy it. There's another issue which has come up here and in many other countries, and that is that the court may give a judgment, may make a decision, but it's not enforced. And there, we in Israel have developed, or we are using, what's known as the contempt of court ordinance. Mm-hmm. The court has the power to punish somebody who is not complying with the court's order. That is not a criminal procedure. The police are not involved. The judge who gave the order will say that, let me give you an example, okay? Little Johnny has to go to daddy on Sunday. And the court will say to the mommy, if little Johnny doesn't go to daddy on Sunday, then on Monday you come into my courtroom with a toothbrush, because I'm sending you to prison for contempt of court for 3 days. And in those 3 days, little Johnny will be with daddy. What would you prefer? And you can impose fines, and you can impose court costs on the parent who is not complying.
And it has immediate impact, right?
It has immediate impact.
Police and then wait until you get
absolutely.
Court, so on and so forth.
There are 2 or 3 issues here. One, as you say rightly, it's immediate. The second is that it's a great deterrent for other people, that they should not consider non-compliance with the court order, because they see that there is a strong disincentive. And the third thing is that if the court's orders are not enforced, the court looks bad. The court looks as if it's powerless. So the judge is spending a lot of time trying the case and making the decision. But if his decision is not executed, the kids will learn to laugh at the court. They'll say it's toothless, it has no power. So there are 3 very good reasons why the court should be empowered to impose sanctions. Not heavy sanctions. We're not sending people to prison for 6 months or 10 years. But to make it clear that compliance with the court order is essential. It's essential for the child, and it's essential for the system. The other main issue which I'm addressing is prevention. And that is how we can bring about a situation in which these alienations will not occur. And that involves several levels. It involves a publicity campaign, that people should know that parental alienation exists and how terrible it is. And that is what Happy Parenting Malta for Happier Children has been doing very effectively. There has to be education for young people as to how to make relationships, how to identify the person who's going to be a good partner. And that involves discerning about communication skills. That involves how to resolve issues. And if on the 3rd or 4th date you find that the person is really not really as pleasant as you thought, then cut it off and don't get married to the wrong person. The 3rd stage is immediate identification of a child who is under stress because of problems in the family. And there we need to train teachers and school counselors and medical doctors and social workers to see the first signs and immediately to call in the parents and say, your little Janie seems to be having a rough time, what can we do to help? And refer the parents to get professional help about their co-parenting so that there will not be continuation and deterioration, and also to get the child into therapy. The 3rd stage, of course, is, as I say, in court. That cases in court should be dealt with immediately, effectively. There should be experts who can advise the court. There should be, the judge himself should be sufficiently knowledgeable. In Israel, there is now a practice direction that a case in which there's an allegation of abuse against a child must go before the judge within 14 days of filing. And the parents have to be there. And the court can immediately appoint counsel for the child, and so on. So these are the kinds of reforms that I am hoping that will come into effect in Malta.
Your Honor.